Hi. How are you? Congratulations. Doing awesome stuff, I see.
Yes, we
Always.
trying to.
You are awesome, girl. I don't know how you do it all.
I don't know, but I'm telling you.
Well, it's paying off.
It's
it looks
paying
like.
off, yeah.
I'm watching you do it.
Oh my God, thank
Yeah.
you.
Amen, right? Amen. Yeah.
Next show.
Yeah, no, I know. I couldn't go to that one. Another stuff went on, but I want to. That looked really cool. Let me, well, I'm sure you'll put it out there. Yeah, that'd be cool. Thank you. Oh, what? Yeah, like right here behind you at work, or there's one over here, one over there.
Just for now.
Yeah.
Was working, I ran out of $10 pizza, you know.
Oh, you know, that's the good one.
Somebody to take pictures and I get my
Oh yeah, and the city will too usually, or we'll find somebody. We'll find somebody. They almost always are good about that.
It's just an
Making the rounds, saying hello to everybody. Good to see you. Right bike today? It's cold. Yeah, okay. Yep, exactly. Good. How are you? I saw you walked in and then I walked back up.
yeah.
Hi, Mikey, back here. In case you have questions. I think it's always good to know that you're here when we talk about something.
Oh, yeah.
Have an opportunity. It's part of the dynamic, I feel like. Yeah. But I mean more like if we have questions. And like we want your input of what, not always staff, but sometimes managers. What you would do. You know what I mean? Yeah. A little backstory.
So I've been continuing to dig into that.
And just backing up with
We've
staff.
already divided the primary house into likely divided the existing house. So they brought in the official permit. We don't have the kitchen report, so we haven't locked it yet, but we're connected to ownership of the Ford Avenue house.
How are you?
So there's a common owner for the
I'm good.
and so they like the park. It's cold. And
That's what I do.
So I'm talking to the city, that's the deal, so if I don't think you guys have problems there. We have 4 who could.
No, yeah, right. I'm sorry. I brought hot tea tonight. I was like, bring hot tea instead of water.
And so I talked to them.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Just give me a moment, because we are gonna look
Talk
at
to you later.
just to make it more difficult to do this sort of thing. But I'm really it's like it's this location, just all the. I think that one of you guys are probably, I'm gonna try, like, when they do this. I mean, I get to that extent.
say it's, you know, say, I think it's the extension of, legislative agent, these are, these units. Is that, in my experience, ICC.
I'm the best. How are you?
The state legislature.
Okay. Log into this meeting real quick.
And I still think it's I know what. And I think that we can figure out. Is that what it is? If they have it like between two common areas? They can't just have a band or. So they can. Where does it say? And I can challenge you. Where it actually says. So what I German basically they say that. So that's something. You have to one kitchen. So that's the So I think that's actually why we're just
Good evening and welcome to the City of Lemon Grove's regular city council meeting. I would like to remind everyone to silence their cell phones. City clerk, would you please call the roll of the city council members to go on record as in attendance?
Councilmember Altamirano.
Here.
Councilmember Heredia,
Here?
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza,
Here.
Mayor Snow,
Here.
Mayor Snow, we have a quorum of the city council.
Wonderful. Next, Councilmember Altamirano, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? City Clerk, are there any changes to the agenda?
Mayor Snow, I have no changes to tonight's agenda.
So tonight we'll start off with some presentations. First, we have a presentation of a certificate of recognition to Oshea of Oshea's Fashions. So as she's coming up here, I'm going to cue to my city clerk, our city clerk. She's got an amazing presentation for us to see. So come on up here to the. Now that we've set the mood with the lighting, we're gonna hit play on that video, and you'll see some of the amazing work that she did. We had a local fashion show here, and Ann Stapleton, I think I saw you out there in the audience. If you wanna stand up, oh, there she is in the back. Ann Stapleton's, the neighborhood there, hosted the fashion show, and it was absolutely incredible. And we're just so grateful to Oshea for bringing fashion and elegance into our community, so here we go. Unfortunately, we don't have sound. All right, that was a little taste. You have to go down to her store. But absolutely incredible, and I know that there's several council members up here who is also praised and blessed by the beauty you bring to our community. But we just wanted to share our gratitude for the business that you kept here, for the amazing designs and creative spirit that you bring, but also the leadership to our community. And so I'm super grateful for this. So we will, we'll present this, but I'll also give some opportunity to my council members, to say something as well.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza?
So you've had your shop in Lemon Grove for quite a while,
Yes,
10 years,
15 years.
15 years now, unbelievable. And, I have a couple of favorite outfits that you set me up with.
Yes.
And I just wanna say, if you have not been to her little shop on Broadway, give it a try. Tuesdays, are they still $10 Tuesdays?
Yes.
Okay, we have $10 Tuesdays.
We have $10 Tuesdays.
And, anyway, it's really a fun little, shop, and I always find something, interesting when, in fact, I have like one of my favorite dresses
Oh.
that I bought from you, along, like, pre-COVID, so,
Yes.
Anyway, it stood the test of time.
Yes.
Thank you for, having your business here in Lemon Grove, we appreciate it.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other council? Councilmember Heredia?
I too have several O'Shea dresses, and I plan to have many more, because every time you go in there, it's a whole experience. Don't go in there rushing it, please take your time. She's going to style you and make you feel like the most amazing, vibrant person that you ever wanted to be. So thank you for what you do, Britt, because it is one of a kind. Thank you.
So much. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Altamirano?
I'm missing out, cause I mean, I don't have anything, so that just means I get to go.
I'm glad we connected.
Yeah, but just every interaction that I have with you is, you're so welcoming and so loving, and your smile is always just inviting and warm, and just, you're amazing to be around. Thank you for being part of our community.
Thank you. It is my pleasure.
All right, so now we get to come down and take a picture with you as we present the certificate.
I'm so honored. Thank you.
And did you want to share any words?
I just wanna say,
You can take it off.
yeah,
There you go.
I wanna thank everybody who has supported me in the boutique. I love Lemon Grove. I grew up in Lemon Grove. I remember walking through the cows to go to Mount Miguel, and I would never thought that I would have a business over here, and started small and how it grew. Such a blessing of many blessed people here in Lemon Grove. And I just wanna thank all of you guys who support me and those new people who are coming. I just wanna say, I love you guys so much. You continue to do great things in Lemon Grove. You continue to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We were just saying, we should have worn
worn our outfits.
Worn our outfits.
should've worn your own.
Might wanna turn on the lights before you take a picture.
Oh, okay. Oh, can we
Lights on the lights?
Can you get my phone there, please? It's on the ground there. Thank you, guys.
Oh,
I don't know how to, oh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm so sorry. Here we go. Thank you so much. Thanks. Go to the logo. Go to.
Makes a more lasting memory.
Okay, I got a bunch.
Thank you guys so much.
So next, we get to honor another wonderful business in our community. Today, we'd like to present a certificate of recognition to Project Aware in celebration of its 20th anniversary, and also a certificate to its president, Reggie Washington. And we have many representatives here tonight from Project Aware. We have Lloyd Baker. Is Lloyd here? Ah, wonderful, come on up. Marquita Barnes, who is the Chief Operating Officer. Shanika Washington, Case Manager Extraordinaire. Guillermo Briseño. And Wendy Luna. Okay. And anyone else who wants to come from Project Aware, come on up to the front. So I'm not sure if you know what, everybody knows what Project Aware does for our community, but it is an incredible program that teaches emotional intelligence to our youth, who helps them overcome difficulties when they encounter them, and is on the front lines of making sure that our kids are safe from dangerous drugs that are flooding our streets. And so we thank you for installing the Narcan vending machine there. So it makes it easily accessible to people and literally saving lives. So we just want to give you a shout out and recognition to this amazing group. Congratulations on your 20th anniversary. Mr. Washington isn't able to be here with us today. He is out in, I believe, in North Carolina. So, but I did get to talk to him today. But we are just so proud to have you as part of this community. Neighbors with O'Shea Designs, and we look forward to seeing the new storefronts that are coming. So thank you for being there, thank you for beautifying our downtown and being part of our community. Thank you. Now we'll go through.
Come closer, Alma. In the middle. Thank you.
Thank you so
guys.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you, yeah. Well, that's always exciting to be able to do that and honor the incredible businesses that we have in our community. This is really one of the best places to be able to open your first business. We have some of the lowest permitting fees around, we have some of the least expensive, although that's relatively, but in the entire county. And this is really the place that you can come and be the entrepreneur and start your first business. So we're excited to foster these incredible businesses, particularly these ones who've been around for over a decade. So thank you so much. Next, we'll move to public comment. During the public comment portion of this meeting, the public may express their concerns that are not pertaining to items on the agenda. Please note that according to state law, the city council isn't permitted to respond back to any questions, but what we can do is we can direct staff to respond to you in the future. So if you have questions or issues that you want responded to, please let our city clerk know, and we'll make sure that you get followed up with, and so you can get answers to your questions. All remarks should be addressed to the city council as a body and not to individual city council members. Each speaker will have a maximum of 3 minutes. When speaking, there will be a green light, a yellow light when your time is almost up, and then a red light to indicate it's the next speaker's turn. And we have 2 public speakers for tonight. The first speaker is Ken King.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? No? We pay the sheriff department, what, $7 million a year to patrol? Comes to calls. Can we ask them why they're not showing up for calls? Why they're still sitting at their office, having their iced coffees, just relaxing? And not until you mention something on Facebook do they show up, or actually call you 2 hours later for incidents. Perhaps that's why the lady passed away in Bushes, because the sheriff department didn't show up, because they're too busy drinking the lattes. We need to check on this. We need to change it. As for the homeless on North Avenue, good job moving only 30 people into housing out of the 100 that you were supposed to. You pushed the other ones behind the Chevron, and then you pushed them from the Chevron over to the people that live in the apartments across the street. And now you want to do a phase 2 to clean up this. Are we gonna do a phase 3, 4, 5, 10? Well, why don't you just fix the problem the first time, instead of shuffling them around? your BS with the money, where's it going? Where's the $8.4 million going? I see you brought your little consultant with you, taking pictures tonight. You're the one who falsified information about the recall for you. That's good, really great. Can't wait for you to be gone. Early Christmas present for everybody in the room.
Our next speaker is John Woods.
John Elwood. First, I'd like to know how the electric bicycle and scooters ordinance is coming, progressing. I don't drive anymore, but what I observe is Plum Grove has a whole bunch of incompetent drivers or operators, what do you wanna call them, gamers. That they don't stop, and when they decide to make a left turn or merge, they just do it. That's okay for them. Everybody else doesn't matter. And I also observe, especially on Central, this side of, Massachusetts, that, a lot of the people don't bother taking trash cans in after they've been dumped. And sometimes they're there for 3 or 4 days, maybe longer. But it makes the quote unquote city look like garbage. And you should be happy that somebody picks up your trash. And since they come mostly in the morning, when you come home and they're still out, take them to the back. They don't need to be on the street or in the front yard. It's that simple. I don't know what the problem is, but there's definitely a problem. Thank you.
Appreciate it, thanks so much, John. I'll turn it over to city staff, if they can give an update on the, one of the things that one of the speakers referred to was the encampment resolution grant project that we have going on. And so we'll ask for an update on that, but the stats are incredible, but most importantly, they reflect human lives that are being changed for the better in incredible ways. So I'll turn it over to our city manager to provide a report and update on the RTFH grant.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. We had a full report by RTFH at last city council meeting. And what they did signify is the first phase worked with 32 individuals. Of the 32 individuals, 30 were placed in permanent homes with wraparound services, and that's where some of the grant is paying for. They've moved on to phase 2. Phase 2 is actually in locations on the west of Lemon Grove and the east of Lemon Grove. So they're looking at the Buena Vista Bridge and underneath the bridge. They're also looking at the Pacific area and the area that is behind Walgreens and the other property. They're currently working on those individuals. That phase is going to be through the holidays and the beginning of the year. As RTFH said early at the meeting last time, they had just gone there a week and they've already housed 2 individuals. I will get a report at the end of the week, and so I will report back as to what that is. There's 42 individuals in that particular second phase, and they're hoping to house all 42. And they've had from what I've heard is they've had early success rate because of phase 1. And so we're continually working with that. We're also working with the property owners of Walgreens and Chevron to ensure that it stays as clean as possible until we get those individuals moved into homes, and then we'll remove whatever's left over of the encampment and clear it, so nobody can come back in. And so they're all on the by name list. They're all gonna be situated to be housed, at least right, my last report of the location at Walgreens, and the Chevron and Pacific. And those are, Lemon Grove homeless individuals that have been part of the homeless complement for, quite a while. The grant that was, given to RTFH in partnership with myself, with the city of Lemon Grove and the, city of La Mesa, is $8.4 million for 2 years. And that includes housing for that entire time for those individuals. It also includes wraparound social services. So whether that is mental health services or addiction services, job retraining services, that is all part and parcel of the grant. And when the grant is completed, and first phases 1, 2, 3, and 4 are completed, because they're moving down the Broadway corridor or down the 78 corridor, we hope to house at least no less than 102 individuals permanently in Lemon Grove.
Thank you so much. That's an incredible update, and I'm sure many people in this community really appreciate the hard work that's going into that. We'll now next move to the next agenda item, which is the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar? Actually, do we have any speaker comments on this consent calendar?
Mayor Snow, we have no speaker slips for the consent calendar.
Okay, so we'll close public comment on that item, and then I'll ask, do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I will move to approve it.
I'll second.
The motion was made by Councilmember Altamirano with a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza. I will now conduct the roll to go on the record. Councilmember Heredia,
Aye.
Councilmember Altamirano,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza,
Aye.
Mayor Snow.
Aye.
The motion carries on a vote of 4-0.
Next, we have the public hearing portion. This is item number 2 on the agenda. It's an ordinance amending Lemon Grove Municipal Code, Title 17, zoning, Chapter 17.08, definitions, Chapter 17.16 zoning districts, Chapter 17.20 special overlay districts, and Chapter 17.28 procedure and administration implementing general plan housing element programs 14 and 15. City clerk, have all notices required by law been given, and is there a complete file with the complete file of exhibits, correspondence, and other documents?
Mayor Snow and council members, all notices as required by law have been provided.
I'll now turn it over to our city attorney, Kristen Steinke, to ask council if they have any disclosures or conflicts of interest related to this item.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Because it's a public hearing, we'll go through the process of asking individually whether you have any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications regarding the matter. As with any other item, you should be disclosing these on your own accord, but for public hearings, we go through this one by one. So I'll start with Councilmember Altamirano. Any conflicts of interest or ex parte communications?
None to report.
Councilmember Heredia?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza?
I have none.
And Mayor Snow?
Nothing to report.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce Bill Chopik, Special Projects Planner, to present the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, and members of the City Council. Next slide, if you would, please. Joelle. Okay, why are we doing this? The purpose is to implement the Lemon Grove General Plan, specifically the housing element of the general plan. 2, to comply with state housing laws, and 3, to maintain the state's certification of the Lemon Grove housing. Next slide. Just to give some background, the housing elements in the state of California are required to be updated every 8 years. We're currently in the middle of the 6th cycle housing element, which covers 2021 through 2029. In 2021, the City Council adopted the housing element, and it took a couple of years. In 2023, the state then certified the city's housing element after requesting some revisions. And just this last last October 27th, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing to review this item and adopted a resolution that's included in the staff report recommending that City Council approve the proposed zoning ordinance amendments. Next slide. So the Planning Commission had some discussion about some of the specifics in the zoning ordinance and zoning ordinance amendments. And part of what will be required or allowed by right is permanent supportive housing projects. And the state has a requirement in those supportive housing projects, a requirement for support services to be included. And the state's minimum is 90 square feet of support services for housing projects of 20 units or less. 90 square feet is about the size of one bedroom. The Planning Commission had some discussion and felt that that was a little low and recommends increasing that to 200 square feet for support services. As in the support services portion of the housing building would contain common areas, kitchens, gathering areas, communal areas. So they're recommending increasing that minimum from 90 to 200 in the city of Lemon Grove. And that's for projects of 20 units or less. For permanent supportive housing projects of more than 20 units, from 20 to 50 units, the state's minimum is 3% of the floor area would be devoted to support services. The Planning Commission recommends that go up to 10% of the total floor area. So that would provide more support service area in the building for the residents of the building. Also, getting to kind of urban form and to provide some design guidelines toward these permanent supportive housing projects. The Planning Commission asked or would like to require in these projects that the support services be located on the ground floor, facing the public right of way, or facing the street, at the setback line. And this is similar to the city's design guidelines in the downtown area, where in mixed-use projects you have the residential units above with the retail commercial on the ground floor facing the street at the setback line. That was some of the reasoning behind this recommendation. Also, with regard to parking, we're revising parking for emergency shelters. In the emergency homeless shelter overlay zone. And the Planning Commission recommends adding one space for every 10 beds in addition to parking for staff for the emergency shelter. Now, an emergency shelter is a temporary shelter. The emergency homeless shelter overlay zone was adopted in 2019. Since then, we've had no emergency shelters or no inquiries put in an emergency shelters, but the parking standard currently is considered subjective by the State Department of Housing and Community Development by their standards. So there's a little revision there. The Planning Commission, upon discussing people experiencing homelessness, that not all homeless, it's kind of assumed that a homeless person doesn't own a car, but many do. And so that's a recommendation to add one parking space for every 10 beds in an emergency homeless shelter. Next slide. So in the proposed zoning ordinance amendments, which are included in the staff report as attachment A, you'll see the language that's proposed to be added and underlined. and language to be stricken in strike-through format. In the zoning ordinance amendment, we would add 10 new definitions. Those definitions, they appear on page 14 of the staff report. These definitions are derived from the California Government Code, from state law, that should be included in the city zoning ordinance to be consistent with state law. One definition, the definition of family has been slightly edited. So, just quickly to go through those definitions. We're adding the definitions start on page 14 of the staff report. There's a definition of bridge housing, definition of by right, emergency homeless shelter, employee housing, revised definition of family, just to separate transitional housing and supportive housing. Definition of a low barrier navigation center, a definition of respite or recuperative care, supportive housing, target population, transitional housing, respite, or I just noticed respite or recuperative care is next slide, please. Housing element program 14 deals with special needs housing, and what the zoning ordinance amendment would do would allow low barrier navigation centers in the residential professional zone and the general commercial zone. These zones can be found on the city zoning map. Permanent supportive housing projects would be allowed by right in the residential medium high, the residential professional, and the general commercial zones. And then employee housing, accommodating 6 or fewer employees would be treated as any other permitted use in residential zones. Next slide. Housing element program 14 to reduce governmental constraints. There's a recommendation to change the parking standard in the emergency homeless shelter overlay zone to an objective standard, which is sufficient parking for employees, staff serving the shelter, and 1 space for 10 beds. And then residential care facilities or group homes for 7 or more persons, it's found can still be subject to a conditional use permit. But the 4 findings for a conditional use permit, of the 4 findings, the finding number 1, dealing with community compatibility, is considered a subjective standard, and revision would be that residential care facilities would not be subject to finding number 1 for community compatibility when a conditional use permit is being issued for that project. Next slide. Housing element program 22 is by right approval, so it establishes, and what is meant by right approval means that a project can be approved, building permit and the standard permits, and not discretionary review. So by right means a permitted use. And this by right approval is outlined in a new section of the Lemon Grove Municipal Code, section 17.28.100. that outlines the process for determining that by right approval process. Program 22 also directs the city to amend its zoning ordinance to allow by right approval on the reuse sites that are contained in Appendix B of the housing element. These are by right approval for housing developments with at least 20% of units affordable to lower income households would be allowed by right on those reuse sites, primarily in the downtown village and along Broadway, identified in the city's housing element. Next slide. There are two findings that have to be made in order to approve a zoning ordinance amendment. Finding one is that the proposed amendment is consistent with the general plan in accordance with California Government Code Section 6580 as amended, and two, that the public health, safety, and general welfare benefit from the adoption of the proposed amendment. Staff believes that these findings can be made in the affirmative. And next slide, staff recommends that the City Council introduce for its first reading an ordinance amending Lemon Grove Municipal Code Title 17 zoning and those subsections 1708 definitions, 1716 zoning districts, 17.20 special overlay districts, and chapter 17.28 procedure and administration. This would implement general plan housing element programs 14 and 22 and align the city's zoning ordinance with state law. That concludes staff report. If there are any questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. We'll now open the public hearing. City Clerk, do we have any speaker slips for this item? We do. The first speaker that we have is Chen Kong.
Hi everyone, good evening.
Can you hear me?
I'm so happy to be here and pretty new in this city. I just bought a new home in this year and April. So I just hear like this instruction, the Title 17 zone. Before I have no idea, like I cannot even find my new home in this area. I saw the SAT 7, probably my home are around this area. But I don't want, city build a home with housing like on my home or like nearby my home. I just save like 10 years money, just pay the down payment and buy a new home. I don't want my house, the like price going down. And also I pay like every month like around 1,000 tax. I want to really help the people, but I don't want to have the people every day that drive lazy, don't want a job and just go around like a junkie. We can see the news every single day in the in the TV, and I want our city like pretty clean and be better. I don't want like our city look ugly, look bad and dirty, and cost our money support for some people. They don't want their life to be better. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next we have Shane Hanna.
Good evening. So I also recently purchased a property in this zoning area, and it's been brought to my attention that there is possibly a pretty major oversight in the development of this zoning proposal, and that is that our neighborhood isn't even on the map. It's not zoned properly, and perhaps as Mr. Chofik earlier, is that the maps are only reviewed at once every 8 years. So the fact that this has happened and nobody is going out there to see that there's a whole neighborhood there of people who just bought houses in this community, and potentially it being developed in our backyard, because there's only one small plot of land that I can see from my balcony, and it's right smack dab where it's apparently being developed. So that's gonna have a major impact on me, my neighbors, our families, our loved ones, who are going to be seeing the repercussions of having something built right there in our backyard. I wanna make sure that we're zoned properly, and that there is some discretionary review showing that you came out and that you're not trying to circumvent our rights as Americans, as homeowners, as people of Lemon Grove. So that's my grievance, and we would like to see some feedback about this, getting our community property zone, and so that this can go forward and clean up our community and have a nice city. Thank you.
We appreciate it. Next, we have Carla Murphy.
Good evening. My name is Carla. I also, with my family, bought a new home here in Lemon Grove. I'm also a member of the HOA board of this as well. We're bordering First Street project, so it affects us, very closely. The HOA represents the interest of 19 properties, and we contribute to the tax base of Lemon Grove, the total amount of $15.2 million. But we're not represented. The zoning map does not represent us, and we want to be represented. So my family and I are voting no for adopting these ordinances.
We have Daniel Murphy next. Thank you.
Good afternoon, council, city council. My name is Daniel Murphy. I also am here to talk about, this proposal. May I see the map, please? Upon reviewing took a look at the documentation, the ordinance, details. At the very back of it, there was an appendix, there was a map at the very back. There was two of them. One was the emergency overlay map, and the second one was the actual zoning map itself. Upon looking at the zoning map, my particular residence and the residents of previous speakers, we all reside in STA number 7. If you take a look at STA number 7, you'll see that is marked as a large parcel. That's incorrect. And this is very important for us. I actually went and validated, I called my title company, and I was able to validate that the zoning for my particular house in particular is residential low medium. That is not reflected in the zoning map. Furthermore, I went and I called the planning department on Monday afternoon, and I asked them when the last time the zoning map was updated. I was told 2015. It's 2025. Just as a quick reminder, the population in 2015 was 26,199. In 2020, it was 27,627. That was a 5% increase. From 2020 to 2025, 28,163. My information was the California City of Leagues, the United States Census, and the California Department of Finance, respectively. This is a 7% in aggregate increase in population, and the zoning map hasn't been adjusted. This is very important to my fellow residents and myself. We are taxpaying members, we are contributing to this community, but we do not have representation on the map. This is very important. I ask you guys to vote no. It's very important that in order to make these findings, you guys are gonna be using the maps and these findings as part of your decision-making process. If you guys do not have the right information, how can you make a sound decision? Particularly because I will be in the STA 7, which is the Troy Street SR 125 plain area in particular. And I am indicated as a large parcel. I ask you guys to respectfully please reconsider, to take a look at the zoning map to accurately reflect our community. There's 19 residents, and there's 5 of us here. And so we want to contribute to our community, we want to be a part of our community, but in order to do that, we have to physically exist in our community, at least on this map. And so, in closing, I just wanted to ask you guys to please, can we please table the item, say no to this this adoption? Let's get a correct zoning map in there so that we can have the right information and make the right decision. It's very important. And again, 10 years is a long time to adjust your zoning map. We've grown by 7%. I respectfully request that we give that some consideration, please. Thank you, that's my time.
We have, sorry, we have no additional speakers. I'll turn to city staff to see if they want to.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Joelle, if you could go to the next slide, it's the city zoning map. And this is the zoning map that is most current, updated in 2015. And what I believe has happened here is when the Vista Azul project was approved, there was a zone change that went along with that approval, and it didn't get reflected on the zoning map. STA 7, okay, STA 7 is the interchange, like the gentleman mentioned. The 125 interchange, there was a one-time off-ramp, on-ramp proposal there, but that never went through, so it's essentially leftover Caltrans property. The Vista Azul property is no,
Interrupt. Right there, man. That's where it is.
yeah, that's STA 7.
That's where my house is.
Okay, so this zoning map wasn't updated to reflect the Vista Azul development, which would have to be corrected for that development, which has been developed with the homes. All of the other parcels surrounding that, shown in the yellow color, that's residential low medium. And none of these zoning ordinance changes would affect the residential low medium, the yellow areas on the map. But the speakers raise a good point that the city zoning map is not up to date with respect to the Vista Azul project.
City Attorney Steinke?
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify something with staff, is that although the map does not reflect the zoning change, you indicated that the development project that the residents are speaking about did come along with a change to the general plan, correct? So even though it's not reflected on the map that we're looking at, on paper, in documents that we have, that zoning area has been changed, correct?
Correct.
It's just the physical, the act of changing the map to reflect the zoning change has not happened, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
That's not correct. We're zoned.
I'm sorry, sir. Public comment is closed, and so if you have additional comments, we're happy to follow up, but just write them down, and we'll give them to city staff, and I'll get back to you on it.
So based on what staff has said, is that a zoning change has happened, and that the development project that the citizens have got up and talked about are in a residential low, correct?
Medium residential zone. So the Vista Azul project included a general plan amendment and a zone change that changed the zoning designation from RLM to RM. However, the map hasn't been updated since that approval, so it doesn't reflect that change that occurred with that project.
But the change has happened.
Correct.
Okay.
Does staff have any additional responses to questions, or can we move to council questions at this time?
The only reply is that I believe all of you have purchased homes in the Vista Azul project, correct?
Yeah,
representing Vista Azul. So that property has been rezoned and developed with the homes that you've purchased, and that remains in place with, under the zoning that the zone change was approved. So this zoning ordinance amendment would allow a permanent supportive housing project in the residential medium zone. However, your property is already developed, so there's not really any additional property surrounding that, your neighborhood, undeveloped property in the RM zone. It's all, your property is surrounded by residential low and special treatment area 7. So that's, I don't know if that helps.
Could I say, in other words, a emergency shelter could not be built in that zone, is that correct?
Correct, an emergency shelter, but permanent supportive housing would be allowed by right in the residential medium zone, but the Vista Azul property is already developed. And the Vista Azul property is surrounded by parcels that would not allow that by right. It'd be either in the our residential low or the special treatment area 7, which says that any development is subject to a plan development permit, which is discretionary review.
I speak on my housing insight.
So we do public comment at the beginning, and so if you have additional follow-up things that you want to talk about, I promise you city staff will get back to you. I will personally shepherd it and make sure that they get back to you. But unfortunately, that's the way it's set up. You get 3 minutes of public comment, and then we move on to our question and answer period. So I'll go ahead and ask our city clerk when he gets a second to go ahead and turn the lights back on. And then I'll look to the city manager and see if she has any additional comments.
Mr. Topic, can you go over the second map that talks about the emergency homeless shelter zone change?
Okay, so in 2019, the city council adopted the emergency homeless shelter overlay zone. This was in response to state law that said that cities must provide a zone in their city or locations in their city that allow emergency homeless shelters. Now, emergency homeless shelters are temporary homeless shelters. Typically you'll see come up during extreme cold or extreme heat periods. These are the parcels that are identified and in the emergency homeless shelter overlay zone, and it takes in pretty much the entire light industrial area along Federal Boulevard, a county site on Broadway, and commercial sites along Broadway and North Avenue. And this is where emergency homeless shelters are permitted since 2019.
City Manager or City Attorney Steinke?
I would add too that in the planning world, when you have something like an emergency shelter homeless overlay zone, it doesn't mean that a project is proposed. It just indicates that your general plan or your specific plan has made room pursuant to state law, that there are locations in your city where emergency homeless shelters may be zoned. And that doesn't even necessarily mean that there's developable space in those emergency shelter overlay zones. It just means that you have zones that you have made room for that type of use in that area. and I don't believe that, well, maybe Mr. Chopper could clarify this, but I don't believe that the development, that's here at issue, is part of the homeless shelter overlay zone, is that correct?
I'm not sure of the question. Since this was adopted, there have been no emergency shelters proposed or put up since 2019. The Vista Azul property is not located in any of these areas.
That was my question. Thank you.
And so, in the residential medium zone, which Vista Azul is a residential medium zone, it would permit permanent supportive housing by right.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll turn to the first round of questions. I'll ask council if they have any questions for staff, starting with Councilmember Altamirano.
Thank you for the report. Mr. Chopik, can you give us a little bit of history as to what bills or what laws we are adopting here? So as a result of what state bill do we have to adopt this? And is there anything else other than increasing the common area for supportive services or supportive housing that we have added to or gone beyond what we are required by state law? And if we don't adopt this tonight, what are the consequences, potential consequences?
Okay. So there, I can cite the government code sections that apply here. For permanent supportive housing, there's government code section 65651A. It says supportive housing shall be a use by right in zones where multifamily and mixed uses are permitted. That's a government code section, and that's been on the books for a number of years. In order for the city to get its housing element certified by the state, the housing element contains programs 2014 and 22 that say that the city will amend its zoning to allow for these permanent supportive housing projects. So it's part of the city's housing 2021 through 2029 housing element, and it's also required under state law. As to your question, if you don't adopt this tonight, that's fine. I mean, there's time. We certainly don't want the housing element decertified by the state. We are right now in the middle of the 8-year housing element cycle. In another 4 years, the city of Lemon Grove will have to adopt a new housing element reflecting whatever new laws come up in the state. But we're doing this to comply with that state law, government code section I mentioned, and the city's housing element. Now, I mean, decision doesn't have to be made tonight, but if this is not done, the city's at risk of having its housing element decertified. And the consequences of decertification are included in the staff report. Page 9 of the staff report. And the key consequences of a decertified housing element are what's called the builder's remedy, where developers can propose affordable housing projects that are exempt from local zoning and general plan standards, loss of local control, courts can suspend a jurisdiction's ability to issue building permits and approve zoning changes. Court-imposed fines, jurisdictions can face substantial fines, potentially up to $600,000 per month. Limited access to funding. Compliance with housing element law is often a prerequisite for accessing state and federal grants, loans, and other funding programs. Lawsuits and legal fees. Non-compliant jurisdictions are vulnerable to lawsuits, which can result in court order compliance. Accelerated timelines. A jurisdiction that misses its deadline may be forced into shortened 4-year cycle for future housing elements rather than an 8-year cycle. And mandatory rezoning. The jurisdiction may be required to issue by right approval for projects proposed on certain sites to accomplish the regional housing need, even if the project is not aligned with existing zoning. So there's some serious consequences to having a housing element be certified. A decision probably doesn't have to be made tonight. If the council wants to continue this item, that's fine, but this needs to be done.
City Manager?
Councilmember Altamira, just to emphasize that point, the city received the certification of its housing element about 2 years ago, after going several rounds with the Housing and Community Development, State Housing and Community Development staff. As one of our program elements, changing these zonings to comply with what current state law is, as listed in the entirety of Chapter 17 that's presented tonight, is one of those requirements. Every April 1, we have to submit a report to the State Housing and Community Development, and that includes a report on the progress we've made on our housing element. We have told them in the last year's report that we are going to be working on this year and have it approved before the next report is submitted. So, I can tell you that HCD, state HCD is taking this very seriously, and they have gone up and down the state of California looking for cities that are not in compliance. Huntington Beach comes to mind, for those of you who read the paper. They are non-compliance. There are several cities in Northern California that are non-compliance, and they're being sued by the Attorney General, the State Attorney General, to bring them back into compliance. I don't think we want to subject Lemon Grove to that type of scrutiny at this point. And so if you would like to delay it, if there's some issues that we need to fix, then delay it for a month or 2 months, we certainly can do that. But this really is something that we need to address prior to us moving forward with the next HCD report in April.
Thank you for that. The other part of the question was, is there anything that we have gone other than what Planning Commission recommended for us to go beyond the state mandates? Is there anything else that we've added to this housing element?
No.
And then just for the record, we're not changing the number of units in the permanent supporting housing projects. The only thing that is being proposed to change is the square footage for community areas or common areas where these projects will go. So for example, if there is a project that has 20 units or less, state mandates that there's at least 90 square feet of common area where people can come together, either a kitchen or a living room or some type of center. Planning Commission proposed that that was too small and that it went up to 200 square feet. There was some confusion online. I just wanted for the record to clarify that nothing is changing as far as the number of units. What is changing is the square footage for common areas. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, City Manager.
Councilmember Heredia?
Yes, okay, so referring back to the mounts, can we kind of go over the village area a little bit? I know you touched on that just a smidge, and I think that might be an area of concern for some folks.
Okay, on the city zoning map, the downtown village areas, you'll have to see on the screen here, but the downtown village area is also coterminous with the special treatment area 1. In special treatment area 1, the downtown village specific plan applies. So the zoning standards here don't apply to the village because the downtown village specific plan essentially has its own zoning. However, there are many reuse sites located within the downtown village specific plan area that says an affordable housing project with at least 20% affordable units would be allowed by right. The downtown village guidelines would still apply. But you know, as far as form and function, but the downtown village is under its own zoning called the downtown village specific plan.
And then also, I wanted to talk about other cities and what other cities might be doing. They're obviously faced with having to update as well?
Yes, virtually every city in the state of California is subject to these state requirements. In the staff report is a survey that was done with all 18 cities, incorporated cities within San Diego region. And every city is doing the same thing. They're at various points in the process of it's either in their housing element, they've already adopted it, or they're in the process of adopting it.
Are they adding special language and increasing square footage and things like that we are?
I haven't got to that extent to find out the specifics of each city and what they've gone beyond state law. I don't have that information for you, I'm sorry.
Yes, City Manager?
Councilmember Redia, just a good note, is state law is really the baseline. You can make it much more liberal, and in this case, you can extend it a lot bigger. I think most of the cities are taking the stance that Lemon Grove took when we were working with the contract planners that were helping us develop these changes under the auspices of HCD, and it was all done grant funded, by the way. Taxpayers didn't spend any dollars for that, at least Lemon Grove taxpayers. And they're trying to do the basic floor, and not going beyond. I think the planning commission saw an error in that floor, that Councilmember Altamirano spoke about, and tried to correct that error a little.
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza.
First of all, I wanted to thank our neighbors at Vista Azul for coming tonight. Welcome to Lemon Grove. I appreciate your comments. And it's confusing to me too. I would be confused if the zoning map says one thing, and if you know, I know if you read your deed, it's going to say something else. Your deed is going to say what your zoning is for your property, and so it's confusing to me too. So I totally understand why this would set up a red flag for you. And so then my question would be, what would it entail to correct our zoning map? Because I don't think their property is the only one that has been rezoned in the last 10 years. Is that like just something beyond what, and do we have a standard, like do we update our zoning map every 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? Or, you know, I'm not really sure.
Thank you, Councilmember. There's no specific timeline or standard for updating the map. It's pretty common for planning departments to wait until there is a change to the map, before they update individual properties that have been changed in between, one version of the map and the, next version of the map. Generally, the cities I've seen don't do it incrementally, each time.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's been 10 years.
Correct, and that's something that can be looked into as if it's time to make any changes, but, generally, it's only updated when a major change is occurring.
And Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza, if you recall, when I got here in 2016, there was an effort to update the land use map and the zoning map, and that was, there was some community pushback and some council pushback, so we stopped that effort. But at that time, we were looking at updating all of the zoning maps, and we were looking at a few properties that were rezoned. So I made a note that's not part of this topic itself, to work with staff to see what other properties we've had in that last 11-year period, to see if we can't figure out how many have been rezoned and see if it's time to just update our current zoning map, short of not doing a full general plan update.
Right. I know that's much more, is gonna entail a lot more and cost a lot more as well. Okay, I just,
And Councilmember Mendoza, I saw the resolution today that processed that change, so I definitely would offer that to members of the public if they have questions. I can show them the resolution that changed the zoning from R11 to R.
okay, yeah. But when you look, you get something like this and you look at the map and I can see why it would be a little concerning. So anyway, thank you for bringing that to our attention and, we can get that changed soon. And then my other, thing is I did want to thank, we have some planning commission members here and I want to thank them very much because I think that they probably, it looks like you spent a lot of time and a lot of consideration on this item. And that's why we have a planning commission, because then you did that work for us and I appreciate it. And like, I wrote this down, but like the city manager said, you know, the state, we can go beyond what the state has required. And what the state is requiring is, you know, you gave this some careful consideration and I support your suggestions 100%. It makes more sense to have more common area for these, for support, for permanent supported housing projects. And the additional parking requirement as well. So I appreciate that and thank you very much. I don't really have any questions and I plan to support your recommendations.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions for me, and again, thank you all for coming out and sharing your concerns, and hopefully this will spur us to get on the zoning map so it corresponds to the current status of what we're working on. One of the questions that I had was for the reuse sites. It's one of the two prongs is that it's required to be deed restricted. Is there any length of time that it's required to be deed restricted for? Can it be as low as 1 year, or can we set a threshold there?
I believe state law requires a minimum 55-year period of affordability.
And then for the planning commission's recommendations, one of my concerns was on the 90 square feet to 200 square feet for projects of 20 units or less. What if the project is only like a 700 square foot project or a 1,200 square foot project? 200 square feet is a pretty big chunk of that project. Is there any kind of percentage limitation that might be better for that?
You raise a good point that if it's a permanent supportive housing project of just a few units, then they would have a much bigger requirement for support services area in the building. The thresholds that you see are just going straight from state law, the government code, which simply says 90 square feet of support service area for projects of up to 20 units. But you raise a good point. It's just a couple of units, then you've got a much larger support service area.
Maybe we could set them, for projects of 20 units or less, where the square footage is at least like 2,000 square feet, or it's 200 square feet. Good chunk of it in a 2,000 square foot place, maybe even 4,000 to 5,000 square feet. 200 square feet for projects that are at least 4,000 or, 4,000 square feet. Cause that's right between just over the 3% total floor area of the other, for the larger units, more like 5%. And then, the other one I had a question about was, requiring support services to be located on the ground floor facing the public street, on the setback line. I just think logistically, when we get into the weeds on where they're locating support services in these buildings, I mean, ideally, if it's, depending on the kind of support service, ground floor makes sense, but if there's elevators that are, make it easily accessible to a different floor, if the support services are like a swimming pool that's at the top of the building and they need access for swimming therapy, or, if there's so many different ways support services can be done, so I think requiring them to be on a certain place on the public street, I'm not sure that requirement, needs to be that stringent, so I wouldn't be supporting that one. We'll go around one more time and see if there's any, additional comments and, any additional deliberations. We'll start with Councilmember Alvarado.
To the mayor's comment of 200 square feet for projects of 20 and less, 200 square feet is like 15 by 13. So it's like the size of a living room. It's a large bedroom and large closet, but this is community room, so it's like somewhere where people come together. And to me, 200 square feet is, even for a 700 square foot unit that has maybe 3 or 4, rooms, to me that makes sense. I feel like people do better in community, and these spaces are necessary in order for them, for their growth, for their emotional well-being. And when they do receive services, that services can be provided in an open space rather than in the bedroom. So I'm okay with the 200. And just to go back, affordability, the time that a project needs to be affordable for is 55 years, meaning that for a project to go into one of these areas marked in red or orange, they have to be affordable for 55 years. Not a lot of developers can afford that. That's a long, long time. Just for clarity and just so that the community knows that a lot of times this is not, developers are in it to make money. The likeliness of this happening is not great, although it is possible. Another question I had is, let's suppose that the Troy Street project did not happen for some reason. Would one of these projects, either an emergency shelter or a permanent supportive housing project, would that be something that could be built there?
Not under these zoning ordinance revisions.
Thank you.
Councilmember Heredia?
I
just wanted to say thank you again to the planning commission. I think you did a fabulous job. I'm in support, full support of what you've written. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza?
I don't have any.
Okay, we'll turn it over. Can I get a motion to, close the public hearing?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
City Clerk, will you take the roll?
A motion was made by Councilmember Heredia with a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza to close the public hearing at 7:22 p.m. I will now conduct the roll to go on the record. Councilmember Heredia.
Aye.
Councilmember Altamirano.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza.
Aye.
Mayor Snow.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Now we'll move to deliberations. Councilmember Altamirano, do you have any additional deliberations?
I do not.
Councilmember Heredia?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza?
No, and I'd like to make a motion that we introduce for its first reading, ordinance amending Lemon Grove Municipal Code Title 17, zoning, chapter 17.08, definitions, chapter 17.16, zoning districts, chapter 17.20, special overlay districts, and chapter 17.28, procedure and administration, implementing general plan housing element programs 14 and 22.
I'll go ahead and second that, and just note that, these are state regulations, and we talked about some of the consequences of not complying with the state regulations. And the state regulations that are there to really make sure that there is the availability and space designated to make possible housing that everyone can afford. We have not been meeting our marks on creating affordable housing in our community. We're woefully behind. In the last year, we did not build any housing for people who are anything less than moderate income in this community. Moderate income at the time that is right around $137,000 right now. And there are not many families in Lemon Grove that are at $137,000 a year. So for most of the residents that live in the city, we are not building housing that they can afford to even rent, much less buy. And so this is an important step in making sure that we can have housing available to everyone. Otherwise, we will never beat this homelessness crisis because we're constantly creating people who are working, two working parents with two kids that just can't afford $3,300 a month for rent. And until we grapple with that problem, then we are going to continue to see a rise in homelessness. So this is a big step for us as a council to make sure that we can keep people housed, and that's the biggest goal, is to keep people in their housing. So I'll be seconding this, and I'll turn it over to the city manager to call the roll.
The motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza with a second by Mayor Snow to approve staff's recommendation. I will now conduct the roll to go on the record. Councilmember Heredia.
Aye.
Councilmember Altamirano.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza.
Aye.
Mayor Snow.
Aye.
Mayor Snow, the motion passes on a vote of 4-0.
Thank you. We'll now move to reports to council. Item number 3, this is a discussion on new sidewalk project areas. I'll call on Public Works Director Izzy Murguia to present the report.
City doesn't do their homework, and we just screw everybody, as usual.
say this. It makes me very.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy, I appreciate it.
Right now.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I apologize for the delay as I gather my items here. The discussion item before you this evening is really to obtain City Council's feedback and direction on prioritization criteria for new sidewalk installations in the city of Lemon Grove. Before I do that, I'll go over a little bit of background. So in 2023, the City Council adopted a sidewalk master plan. The sidewalk master plan identified sidewalk gaps throughout the city, sidewalk deficiencies, and performed the right-of-way survey. The sidewalk master plan identified 60 miles of sidewalk, and it also identified 65 miles of sidewalk gaps throughout the communities. Since its adoption in 2023, staff has really utilized the sidewalk master plan as a guiding document for addressing sidewalk maintenance in the city, primarily addressing trip hazards, non-compliant ADA ramps, and utilizing this sidewalk master plan for grant funding opportunities as well. Unfortunately, due to funding constraints, historically, the city has not undertaken any new sidewalk projects. New sidewalks in the city have been primarily attributed to or through the development process / dedication process, through the assignment of public improvements based on the cost of the properties that are being developed, so it's part of the public improvement process. That is how primarily sidewalks in the city have been installed. So the result is it's been a long process to develop sidewalks in our communities, and it's also has been a, for lack of better words, piecemeal approach. Historically, funding for sidewalks has been budgeted for sidewalk maintenance, as I mentioned previously. The city primarily, or I should say historically, budgets around $150,000 to $200,000 a year for sidewalk maintenance, and this comes from Transnet and SB1 funds, which share its funding with street improvements. The fiscal year 2025-2026 budget includes new dedicated funding for new sidewalk installations provided by Measure T funds. Staff went to the Measure T committee and proposed this as a project, a dedicated funding source for new sidewalks and new sidewalks only, to keep maintenance and new sidewalk money separately. Since this item is a new project, staff has not had the opportunity to obtain direction or feedback from the city council on areas that the council would like staff to focus on for the installation of new sidewalks. Closely established criteria utilized by the city council has been the criteria that staff uses for streets under 25 PCI. If you remember at our last council meeting, we had our CDBG proposed projects, and as part of that process, we have established criteria that the council has quote unquote adopted for looking at those streets. And this criteria can mirror the selection for new sidewalks, and so I'll briefly review those on this slide. So connectivity, again, when you're looking at street improvements, you're looking at addressing whole blocks instead of mid-block improvements. When you translate that to sidewalks, you're looking at closing the sidewalk gaps. So looking at areas in the city where perhaps there is a block that is missing sidewalk, and that might be an opportunity to close the gap. Maximizing residents served, we look at that for street improvements, and it's a criteria, if you remember our ranking when we selected the CDBG street for improvements. Same thing with sidewalks, does the council want to focus on areas or highly traveled areas as opposed to focusing on neighborhood streets that don't have sidewalks. Maximizing square footage, this really mostly applies to streets and not necessarily sidewalks, but in essence, we're looking to the city council for feedback because we have limited funds. I mean, $750,000 might seem like a lot, but as I will mention in the PowerPoint, when you look at the ancillary improvements, it's not a lot. And so it doesn't go a long way, I should say. And so getting council feedback on whether, are we gonna focus on areas and look at both sides of the street or focus and prioritize one side of the street to ensure that, our funds go longer. And then proximity to parks, schools, and facilities. Again, that's similar to, that criteria is similar to our streets improvement criteria. If you look at areas like our park areas, Lemon Grove, Berry Street Park, Mount Vernon, where Mount Vernon Elementary School, there are significant sidewalk gaps. San Miguel, it's a little bit choppy, especially if you go on west, further west on San Miguel past Janaya Place, sidewalks. So that is a criteria that is shared with our street improvement criteria. And then budget. We can, depending on obviously the area, installing sidewalks can grow tremendously. If you're looking at areas that have topography issues or there are right-of-way issues, staff would have to be looking at costs to also install retaining walls or work with property owners to get dedications over to install sidewalks. So, budget is also an important factor. In our approach today, in selecting or recommended the areas that are included in your staff report, those areas are just examples of areas where, based on site visits, it appears to be that we have the sufficient right-of-way. There aren't topography issues, and so those are areas where kind of low-hanging fruit, for lack of better words, where we can go in and get the installations. And I caveat that with, we will have to follow up with a survey to make sure that we don't have any utility conflicts and to ensure that we have a sufficient right-of-way. So that's kind of the street criteria that we use that is also applicable to sidewalks. Other criteria for consideration is, would the city council want staff to focus on enhancing the characteristic of neighborhoods? For example, like Purple Street doesn't have sidewalks, it's a small little street, but installing sidewalks there would improve the aesthetics of that little community. Or would it rather staff focus on closing gaps? Connectivity to transit is an element that is not addressed in the criteria for street improvements. This criteria is probably less prioritized, or I guess less important. Really, MTS travels along our major arterials, so Broadway, Madera Street, Massachusetts, all areas that already have sidewalks, with the exception of East Broadway. And so, that area, or that criteria is included to give you a highlight of that area as a potential area for sidewalk improvements. And then geographic equity. So the public works staff uses a maintenance zones map. We divide the city into 4 quadrants for addressing maintenance, either striping, new streets, or street enhancements, not new streets, street enhancements. It primarily drives our maintenance priorities. And so the criteria regarding geographic equity essentially means, does the council want staff to look at divvying up the 750,000 and applying it to different zones? The caveat with that is that 750,000, after you divide it into 4 and you subtract design costs, we're looking at around 150,000 roughly for sidewalk improvements. And that, to give you into to put that into context, that's about 2,000 linear feet. And I have a picture here that I can that I'll show you that gives you a better idea of what does 2,000 feet get you. So that's kind of the criteria that's before you that we would like the city council to think about and give staff direction feedback as to what is important to you and the community. Next slide. All right, that would be neat. So this is a snippet of our sidewalk gap map that was generated from the sidewalk master plan. And the areas in red are all the streets that do not have sidewalks. And if you look closely enough, you can see that both sides of the street. The areas in green are areas that do have sidewalks, and again, the map lists or shows, if you look closely enough, it shows both sides of the street that whether or not they have sidewalks. And as referenced in the staff report, a lot of the more urban, newer areas of the community have sidewalks, such as the San Altos, El Prado, southwest area of the city. One of the criteria that I forgot to mention was access to our commercial corridors, which is mostly on the northern end of the city, so North Avenue, Federal Boulevard, and those streets lack, as you know, sidewalks. Those streets are also have specific guidelines through the mobility plan. So there are certain widths that those streets have to adhere to, including sidewalks and parkways, which makes installing sidewalks in those areas difficult without the development process. All right, challenges and benefits. This is a slide just to have the city council consider some of the challenges the staff is faced with. Obviously, or not obviously, the staff hears it all the time. We want more sidewalks, and there's a little bit more constraints to that. One is the adherence to the mobility element. And so for example, when you're looking at a residential street, if we're installing sidewalks on a residential street, we need to have a 5-foot sidewalk plus a 5-foot parkway, an 8-foot parking space, 10-foot lane on both sides. And a lot of our streets are constrained. We don't have the sufficient right-of-way to install those improvements on both sides of the streets. And so we're really challenged or restricted with the mobility element. Right-of-way, again, as I mentioned, again, it's just a follow-up to the item above. Because the city was incorporated later in 1977, a lot of the development standards fell under the county, and those standards are outdated. And so the widths of streets are varied throughout the city. Obviously, the lack of sidewalks is prominent, and that wasn't a requirement during the development, under the county's incorporation. And so access to right-of-way is difficult, and right-of-way differences vary significantly throughout the areas in the city, so it's really a case-by-case basis. Topography, if you look at Central Avenue, you have hillsides on the south end of Central Avenue closer to Federal Boulevard, drop-offs on the north side, making that street very difficult to install sidewalks where Mr. Woods lives, as an example, without, again, going through great lengths of engineering marvels to install sound walls, retaining walls, significant grading. That's just an extreme example. Private property rights, again, the right-of-way and parcel lines differ from neighborhood to neighborhood, but the staff can come across residents that appreciate the rural lifestyle, and they don't want sidewalks, or they would want compensation for them to dedicate 10, 12 feet of their frontage to install sidewalks. That presents a challenge as we go through the process of selecting areas for sidewalk installations. Budget, I mentioned that previously, but ancillary improvements. It's not only sidewalks that we're installing. We're installing sidewalk, we're installing curb, gutter, potentially drainage. If there is a drainage outlet from a property, we have to install specific sidewalk drainage. In addition, we would have to install add improvements, such as driveway approaches, obviously they connect to sidewalks, and are a version of a sidewalk. And so while that might be a private property enhancement, it is part of the public improvement. It's part of the sidewalk public improvement project. And then community concerns, as I mentioned earlier, with regards to living in a more rural setting as opposed to a more urban setting, and then people's perspectives on private property rights. And then benefits, I won't go through this, obviously, we know the benefits of sidewalks, such as having or improving community aesthetics, safety and walkability, ensuring that people can walk safely within their neighborhoods, developing social interactions within their surrounding community, increasing property values, and public health and lifestyle kind of mirrors, kind of encompasses the safety and walkability. So as I mentioned previously, there will be ancillary costs as part of the sidewalk, as part of this sidewalk improvement project. These costs here are estimates based off of our most recent sidewalk improvement project. But just to give you a sense of where how the $750,000 will be kind of parceled out. You have your sidewalk panels, obviously made first and foremost, if we're installing sidewalks in residential areas or on collectors, you're gonna have driveway approaches, curb and gutter, ADA ramps, and sidewalk under drains. And those are our most recent costs based off of our sidewalk maintenance project last year. And so those costs also will have to be factored in. And it's very difficult to see the image, but what I referred to earlier, putting into context the 2,000 linear feet. Down here, this where my laser pointer is San Miguel Avenue. And up here is Central Avenue. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks. The distance from San Miguel to Central Avenue is about 1,200 feet. So to give you some perspective of, if we're looking at $150,000, we could get one side of the street 4 blocks long, approximately. Obviously, if you want to shorten, if you want to put sidewalks on both ends of the street, you know, the distance shortens. We can obviously play with the money as well. This is just based off the category of we're focusing on 150,000 in 4 various zones. To give you some perspective again, as far as what does 2,000 linear feet look like. The next slides are suggested areas that staff has taken a look at, and we'll go briefly over those slides in those areas, and I'll discuss a little bit the reason and why staff selected those areas, and they, in essence, fall within each of the previous categories that I mentioned to give you an idea of how each criteria kind of falls with the respective proposed area, for lack of better words. So North Avenue, Olive Street to Buena Vista Avenue. Olive Street's here, there's Buena Vista, there's Wake Drive. So staff selected this area because this is a CIP, this is a capital improvement project in FY 25-26 to repave North Avenue. When we're looking at the budget, we thought it would be a good project to maximize funds from other projects, since we're already going to be improving this street. We thought it'd be a good opportunity to look at installing sidewalks within this area, specifically on the north side. The north side only on North Ave. Staff has preliminarily looked at this area. There is the right-of-way required for the south side is greater than it is on the north side, meaning we have a little bit more right-of-way on the north end of North Ave based on the maps that we looked at. Additionally, parking is very limited on the south end, so people like really park up against the street, whereas on the north end it's a little bit more flexible, and we would add parking space as part of the sidewalk improvements with this suggested area. The next area is Lincoln Street from Kempf to Washington. And similar to the area before, this is a CDBG project that staff will be repaving Lincoln Street later this year. We thought this area would also be a good opportunity to add sidewalk improvements so that we do it right the first time, and don't have to come back and damage New Street. Similar to North Avenue, the improvements are suggested on the north end of Lincoln Street. The south end has utility conflicts, specifically the SDG&E power poles, and private improvements are, there are unique driveways, which would add to the cost of trying to retrofit to get a sidewalk in, whereas we don't see that on the north end. However, in this area, we do lack right of way regardless, so staff is exploring the option of surveying residents on North Ave to see if they'd be interested in dedicating 8 to 10 feet of property to the city to install sidewalks. So we definitely can come back to staff, we can definitely come back to council or provide council an update on how that initiative is going. But regardless, the street repaving on Lincoln Street is scheduled for this fiscal year. The next area that is suggested is San Miguel Avenue from MacArthur to Janaya Place. And so we're looking at, here's MacArthur and San Miguel, and we're looking at sidewalk improvements on the south end. So we're about Janaya Place is up on the corner, but there is the sidewalk on San Miguel on the south side ends roughly within this area. And so this project is being looked at, one, based on site visits, we feel like, and map information, there is the right of way, and there's also like a faux walking path that is divided by a asphalt curb. And so we feel like that would be an easier project to tackle, low-hanging fruit. And then also, obviously it leads and is adjacent to an elementary school, and would close a sidewalk gap, meaning the sidewalks on San Miguel on the south side. The next area is Mount Vernon Street, west of Massachusetts. And here we're looking on the south side. So here's Massachusetts, and Berry Street Park is here. And we're looking at this area, this block in essence, where it also, again, appears that we have the right of way. The north end, which is from Massachusetts to about Beth Place, is lacking sidewalk, but unlike on the south end, on the north end, we do not have the right of way, and there are public improvements abutting really close to the street. So we would have to obviously get dedications. There is like a garage in one of these houses, like really close, so it'd be obviously an inconvenience to the homeowner and unlikely that we would see a successful outcome in getting a dedication without some type of compensation or significant private improvements. And that section previously was recommended based off of closing sidewalk gaps, an area adjacent to park facilities. Bakersfield and Taft Street. This area here, and the orientation is a little different. Instead of, we have Bakersfield running here left to right. So obviously, this is Canton, and this is Bakersfield running south, and Taft Street here running south, and Hughes Street is here. I think this is called Cotto. But this is a neighborhood, I forget what it's zoned, but it's larger lots, more rural, by preliminary information, sufficient right-of-way to install sidewalks within this area. And so this area was also selected because of its close proximity to Monterey Heights. And again, and another criteria why this area was selected was based off of the criteria of improving or enhancing community aesthetics. And this is a very long stretch, so sidewalks would either have to be installed on one side of the streets or really focus a majority of that $750,000 in this one area. Madison Avenue, Roosevelt Avenue. We got Central Avenue where the laser pointer is. And we have Madison Avenue here, followed by Roosevelt. And then Buena Vista is, you're on the right side of the screen. Again, this is an older neighborhood, but again, based off of preliminary information, we have it appears to that we have sufficient right-of-way. Also, the topography is very flat, and so the concern for any construction costs for retaining walls or things of that nature wouldn't be an issue here. Additionally, this area was selected based off of the criteria of community aesthetics. Just to give you an idea of a neighborhood matching up with a criteria. Similarly, the Roy Street, Baldwin / Darrell Street neighborhood. Here's Kent Street, Washington, Baldwin, Roy, Darrell. These are areas where the topography is very flat. You have houses set back pretty far from the street. It appears that we have sufficient right-of-way, and this area's community was selected based off of the community aesthetic enhancement criteria and also its location to Lemon Grove Middle and Lemon Grove Academy Elementary. One of the other areas that is not on the slide, but it is included in your staff report, is mentions to, essentially improving connectivity. So looking at our collectors, so like Buena Vista, New Jersey, San Miguel, specifically those collectors that run north-south, so your New Jersey, Buena Vista streets. Those are also good viable candidates. The concern would be the length of the street. Again, we're 2,000 feet in that prior example. Looking at Buena Vista, essentially will get you 4 blocks on one side of the street. But those serve as connectors from the south end of the community out up to Broadway. And so those are also really good opportunities for either this this round or next round of funding. Next steps, so after staff receives city council feedback, direction, if the council wants us to come back with other project areas, certainly happy to do so. If the city council is supportive of staff recommendation, our next steps would include the strategy would be utilizing our on-call engineers, which we're currently in the process of bidding and getting a new set of on-call engineers on board. But we would have, once they're on board with us, essentially divide up the projects and assign each consultant an area to have them designed so that it speeds up the delivery of the construction project. So we would assign them each individual task orders. Survey would usually take about 4 to 6 weeks. So a surveyor would come out and identify property lines, parcel lines, again, city right of way, any utility conflicts, topography, any drainage issues. And upon completion of the survey, that consultant would then begin the design process, usually 6 to 8 weeks. Again, these projects aren't designed to be complicated, so pretty straightforward. And then after the design, staff would bid out the projects, either individually or bundle them up as if we get them all, if we get the designs back at the same time. And so we would estimate a 4-week lead time for that. Contract award, obviously we'd have to come back to the city council for awarding those construction projects, which we would estimate around springtime of 2026. And then construction, again, they're not, these areas and these sidewalk projects we didn't select these areas because they were complicated or more low-hanging fruit. Let's get sidewalks in. And so the construction should not be complicated, so we estimate 30 to 45 days for that. In closing, as we refer back to the sidewalk gap, there is significant need, you all know that in the community. We have to start somewhere, and even starting somewhere, it will take multiple phases to get those sidewalk improvements installed. But I think, Measure T is a perfect dedication source that if the Measure T, staff will continue going to the Measure T committee to propose dedicated funding for sidewalks based off of the council's priorities. And so that's something that we have to I have to remind myself about that all the time. We're unable to do it all at the same time. We're not gonna get sidewalks in overnight. And so this is gonna be a very slow and long-term process, but it is a start. And so I hope, I welcome your feedback on the suggested areas and open to other areas as well. So with that, the recommendation tonight is receive the report and provide direction on sidewalk improvement prioritization criteria and/or areas. With that, that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Murguia. This is very exciting news. We have speaker slips, and so I will now turn to the public comment portion. The first speaker is Jacqueline Carr.
Hello, everyone. So I'm very happy that we're gonna get sidewalks. I'm one who walks a lot in Lemon Grove, and sometimes, especially on Skyline, you don't know if you're gonna get hit by a car. But one of the recommendations that I wanted to make, living on Palm Street, where years ago there was federal funding and they put in sidewalks. I think it was the safe school zone, safe to school or something, where we finally got sidewalks that go all the way up to Palm Middle School, something different now. But one of the concerns that was that impacted the residents who live in the duplexes was that the utility companies did some work underneath the ground, whatever, when they installed the sidewalks. And so a sewage pipe got bent. And for years, it wasn't a problem until it was. And once it became a problem, it became known, I think for like maybe 5 or 6 years, we kept having sewage backups. Then during COVID, it was so bad that it would just sit there in the middle of the duplex and nobody would take responsibility for it. I know I called the city and I wrote to the city and I wasn't very nice about it because during COVID especially, anytime, even in the summer, who wants to smell sewage? And it's just sitting there. So somebody had to do something and figure out who caused this problem because the landlord had too many plumbers coming out and it was the same issue. So one of the things I want to make sure that happens is that when the utility companies get involved, that before they close up the sidewalk, that they ensure there's no damage done to the property owners' sewer lines or whatever these things they call, they go from the house to whatever, y'all know what the language is. That the property owner's property is not damaged and then subsequently, years later, they have problems that they have to continue to fix and pay for and it's not to their fault. So I would like something that takes that into consideration that you just don't close up the sidewalk and knowing there's a problem. Somebody knew that that pipe was big, you know, but anyway, that's what I wanted to make a recommendation for. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have John Elwood.
John Elwood. I live on a street that has one sidewalk. And that's up by the Optimum Health Clinic. The only reason they have a sidewalk is because the city gave it to them. Because they had done some work that caused them to have a sidewalk. Well, they have olive trees, and they didn't want the city to come in and put the sidewalk where it was supposed to be because they would lose their olive trees. So the city gave them the sidewalk. And where I live, there is no sidewalk, and it's downhill. And when you're my age, walking down the hill, and you've got cars going very rapidly, you've got semis going up and down the hill, you've got the trash trucks, which is okay, because they only come around once a week. But every once in a while, you get off-brand trash trucks going up and down the street. So, if you ever want to walk on Central, be prepared to get run over, because it's a definite possibility. I don't have a side view mirror on my left side when I walk down the hill, or up the hill, because they come up the hill just as fast as they go down the hill. So, something to look into. I would love to have sidewalks to walk on. And the street is a street. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Next we have Gabrielle Bunn.
Thank you. I'm gonna be a little bit more specific than the others. I love the idea of sidewalks. I think doing one on that section of Lincoln Street, as opposed to doing Kemp from Lincoln Street to Palm Street, go ahead and finish Kemp on one side, is a much better suggestion. Lincoln Street, the people don't hit you, they don't cross into the bike lane, they're avoiding the potholes, but you're gonna fix that anyway. Kemp Street, incredibly dangerous to try to walk on. I walk my dog every day, we walk that section. of it and stuff. But that would be, and it's already, if you look at it, the right of way is a lot easier on that side of Kemp. There's already parking and stuff like that. It just needs to actually have sidewalk finished on that and stuff so that you can see out of the street. That section on Lincoln Street, great, but their houses are pretty close to that. I think you'd have trouble on that side. Obviously, you guys know more than I do on that and everything, but that would be my recommendation, on a specific, or get some community feedback on where sidewalks would be necessary and stuff on that. Thank you.
Appreciate it, Ms. Nunn. Our last speaker is Joe Smith.
Good evening, council. I appreciate the presentation, also hearing the different options in the context for where sidewalks could possibly be in the different areas for the consideration. I want to speak to the concept of providing a pathway, if that's one sidewalk on one side, if that would allow for creation of more sidewalks on more streets. And then prioritizing pathways to schools such as near Mount Vernon, but also consider those pathways and what would those pathways look like if they were near more businesses that allow walkability to our businesses. Thank you for the presentation.
That concludes our public comment portion. Next, we will move on to questions and comments. I'll start with Councilmember Heredia.
Thank you, Mr. Murguia. I liked a lot of these areas. I am a fan of sidewalks. I don't have sidewalks on my street, but I do on one side of my street for part of the way, so I'll take what I got. But I did go by every single one of these segments of streets and actually personally look at each single area. And I had a couple things that I saw that maybe you didn't see, or, I can just bring up. For each project, I know like for North Avenue, when I went over there from Olive to Buena Vista, it's a pretty short little distance and there's a lot of parking problems on that side that you are suggesting. Because of the businesses in that area and some housing that's budding up there, and how Citronica doesn't have any parking. So if we put a sidewalk there, I think it's gonna take away from that. Also on the Lincoln section from Kemp to Washington, I also agree that the school, it should connect from the school, past the pickleball, down to like the Jack in the Box. I would like to see that instead of on Lincoln itself. Because the school side of Lincoln on that side does have sidewalk, and that would make it a lot safer for the kids, and that's what I want to advocate for, is mostly parks and schools. The San Miguel, MacArthur to Jania, I actually would have liked to see where, I'm not sure the name of that street right there, across from the crosswalk where the school is. It ends right there, at the crosswalk, and then, thank you, Cornelius. And then, that side doesn't have any sidewalk until you get down to the church. My concern for that was, I like the other side as well, cause it's the school side, but what's gonna happen is people that live on the other side of those neighborhoods, they're gonna need to use that crosswalk. And so that connectivity on that side of the street is more important than the side that they don't need to cross, because there's no good crossing place at all on that street once you pass that crosswalk. So I thought that might be of interest. The Mount Vernon west of Massachusetts, absolutely love that. I'd like to see it go from, the light past the park. Connects over there, it looked like anyway, I wanna say on that side, once you get to that point. So I really like that one. The Bakersfield and Taft, I felt like there was like literally no sidewalks anywhere in that area that would really connect. I mean, I know that it feeds to the school, and that's maybe something to be thinking of forward, but I felt like that sort of was a really hard area to make an impression. Madison at Roosevelt, I did think that the Roosevelt section might have some parking issues. I noticed people park at an angle in front of their homes over there, and maximizes how much parking they're getting, so I don't know if we have the actual, I mean, I think we have the right of way over there, but I don't know how the community over there would feel. Also, the one that I was really interested in, and it's not on here actually, was the, Washington Street from Mount Vernon to Golden Avenue. And I actually liked that on the other direction, so that we would actually put from, there's a sidewalk that goes from Blossom Hall down to the stop sign at, Washington and Mount Vernon. And then you could continue that sidewalk to turn the corner and go all the way down to the park, down to that stop sign, and go, the direction, so that we're encompassing that whole park, making it a walkable, safe distance from the school to the park. That's a very neighborhoody, lot of kids and families in that area. So that was one that I thought would be a better served to go the other way. Again, I'm not a professional, I don't know all the ins and outs of all the obstacles that you have, but those were just some takeaways that I had. So, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza?
So, I'm going to start with, challenges and benefits that I sort of would support. I do think we should, for now, prioritize just one side of the street so that we can extend our dollars and get as many, areas walkable as possible. I like that you've prioritized being, near schools and parks. I would like to continue, with that priority. And closing gaps. There are some relatively small gaps, that we could look at closing. And I like, you've done a good job with your selections, so I do appreciate those. And then one thing that is not, you mentioned it very briefly, and that's East Broadway. And there are a lot of apartments on East Broadway, like between, the Spring Street, between Spring Street and, Sweetwater, okay? And there's a lot of gaps. And it's a long section, there's new housing there, there's a nursing home there. There's a lot of apartments that I don't think they're actually low income, but people who are low income live there, and quite a few of them are in wheelchairs. And I know this because, they have a hard time like getting up to the church to pick up food, and so we usually deliver it to them because it's very dangerous for these people in their wheelchairs to be going up and down that street. And I'm wondering if we might want to coordinate with the county on that, because part of that is county, property. So I'm not suggesting that we include that in this initial $750,000, but I do think that that's something we should keep on our radar and look at to the future. And then as to the ones that you did suggest, North Avenue, that great idea. There are a lot of low-income seniors and low-income families who live on North Avenue and right when you get on the freeway there. And they have, the seniors especially, they walk over to Food From Us to get their groceries, and we should make this safer for them. They all have their own grocery carts, and I don't know how that works, but anyway. And then, I appreciate your comments on Lincoln and Kemp. Quite a few years ago, the city received a grant from Kaiser, Healthy Eating, Active Living, and I was on that board for like 6 years. And one of our dreams was, we called it a walk block. And you could what we wanted, and we got part of it, we funded part of the dream. And that was Golden Avenue, sidewalk from Kemp up to Acacia. So that was funded by that Kaiser grant that we received. But the one gap in that walk block, and that's walking all the way down Golden on a sidewalk, which now you can do on both sides of the street, woohoo! And then walking in front of the school, Golden, still called Golden Avenue Elementary, but LGA Academy, the library, then you can walk all the way on a sidewalk past the middle school, and then you can turn on Kemp. But then there's a little section there that you cannot walk safely on. And I'm not sure if that's the section you were talking about, but this is, this is vital, I think, for kids to get safely to and from school. And now we're using that field the field is open on Saturday and Sunday. And, that I hear you on, Lincoln. I think that's important too, because there's a lot of middle schoolers that just keep walking on Lincoln to go home. But if we could improve, Kemp, so you can walk all the way around that school and park area, that would be awesome. San Miguel, so I hear what you're saying about the north side, but that really, that would be tough. I live on the north side, and we could not get property owners to agree to give up their property. I did, my brother did, my next door neighbor wouldn't do it. So, it's made the street very narrow there. And if we tried to continue that past Cornelius down to the church, there's no frontage there. We would actually have to tear people's retaining walls down that they have built, and it would be very costly to do that. But we absolutely have to connect that little neighborhood on Jania Place, that whole neighborhood of houses, to the school. And there's a little shortcut where people can walk over to Berry Street Park. But now it is so dangerous to try to walk there. And the other thing is, if we do extend the sidewalk up to Jania on that side, which I fully support, we need a stop sign or a crosswalk there. Because you are totally taking your life in your hands if you try to cross the street at the top of that hill where it curves around, because no one can see you, and that's from like either direction. And then again, Mount Vernon, west of Massachusetts. I walk there all the time with my dogs. Super dangerous. And this is where we have our, in the summer, every week, we have our concerts in the park. And you see people walking with their wagons and their chairs and picnic stuff, and it's very dangerous to walk to the park. Madison Avenue, Bakersfield Taft, that would not be one of my top priorities. And I think it would cost a lot. Madison Avenue, Roosevelt, those streets aren't really heavily traveled, and I know people who live on those streets, they might not even really want sidewalks. I think they kind of like their little rural area. It's New Jersey and Buena Vista, in that particular area, that is super scary. And you see people out walking their dogs, and kids riding their bikes. But again, that's gonna be pricier, but I would do New Jersey and or Buena Vista around the Madison Roosevelt area, more so than Madison and Roosevelt itself. And then again, Roy, Baldwin, Darrell, there is some school traffic, but they're kind of quiet streets. There's not a lot of traffic. And again, I don't know if we really need aesthetic improvements in there. Those are kind of nice little neighborhoods, nice streets. I definitely want to talk to the neighbors first. We have a resident here, before we, just put that on our list. So those are my priorities. Thank you, sorry it took so long.
So for mine, on the prioritization criteria, so I'll echo a lot of what was said before, but one of my priorities that I'd like to add is safety, particularly on streets where the speed limit is more than 30 miles an hour. If cars are going 30 miles an hour, they say for every 5 miles an hour faster a car is going, it takes a football length, or like, to stop. It adds the amount of time that it takes to stop. And so, San Miguel, which is also by a school, is a 30-mile-an-hour zone unless there's children present. There's usually children present, but most people still travel 30 miles an hour. Some parts of Central, some parts of Mount Vernon. And so I think we should take speed into account when we're doing these, because where the speed of the cars are traveling faster, we need additional safety in those areas. I wholeheartedly agree with the recommendations. On North, I think because we're doing a CIP project, it makes sense to do it while we're working in that area. I do think Kemp is the more dangerous street there, again, because it is an area where this traffic is moving much more quickly. And even where you can walk, it's like the gravel is disintegrating along that area. It's just, even if you're not on the street, you're almost forced into the street to walk because the other part is not walkable. On San Miguel, same things. I know we've talked about putting in a roundabout right there at MacArthur and Jania Street. But again, like, we definitely need something to slow traffic down in that area, and I know that's already on the radar, but while we're doing this, it'd be a good time to two birds with one stone. Mount Vernon, agree, that's another one that's really scary, and because of the amount of people that are walking in that area, I think that's super important. I also share the sentiment that New Jersey and Buena Vista would be a better choice than Madison and Roosevelt. Eventually I should get to them, but New Jersey and Buena Vista are corridors into our downtown commercial area, and so I think it really heightens there. And then also the speed of the traffic through those areas. We see a lot of people going really quickly, and we're kind of pushing commercial where it had been residential in those areas, and I think that we need to honor the fact that more people are gonna be walking on those streets, but we're also increasing traffic at the same point. And now I'll turn it over to Councilmember Altamirano.
Thank you for the report, Mr. Murphy. I like the idea of Buena Vista to Broadway. I suppose that the new developments are gonna require street improvements. Can you confirm that? The car wash and the restaurant?
That's right.
So if we can continue that to maybe San Miguel, on one side at the other, on Buena Vista, I would like to see sidewalks near schools. So Mount Vernon, there's sidewalks on the side of the senior center, but across the street there isn't. And oftentimes there's a group home where people congregate there in the morning, smoking cigarettes and drinking early in the morning. Kids will not walk on that side of the street, and even to come home, they walk on the opposite side. It's a small stretch, and they have to walk that way up. And also on the other side to Massachusetts, to Berry Street Park, the south side, I think that would be an excellent idea. I've twisted my ankle there a couple times going to the concerts. Parking and then walking there, it's kind of like, you're like at an angle, you're walking kind of sideways there. And then I do like the idea on 10th Street, on Lincoln to Palm, either one, near the school district. And overall, safety, as Mayor said, and highly traveled areas would be my priorities. Thank you.
I'll look to council members, do you have any other further comment, or do you think we provided recommendation? Okay, staff, do you have enough clarity on this? Or do you want further direction on any of the points that we've discussed?
No, the conversation was very fruitful. I really appreciate the direction and the feedback. So yes, it's very, very helpful. I don't have any additional comments.
All right, thank you. I'm now gonna check in with council. We're at 8:30. We have quite a few items still left on the agenda, and we have a closed session. I know that, one of our council members has surgery at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I don't wanna make this stay here too late. So we have, I think the number 4 will go pretty quickly. Number 5, how long do you think that'll take?
Mayor and council, I think that really depends on the discussion of the city council. We can certainly hold that over and, if time allows, place it on the meeting for December 2nd, to see if there's time after, after the council interviews, and if not, we can put it on the 18th. The COP's goals and objectives are just wanting feedback and to understand what you want, and I know we had Lieutenant already had a presentation. We can certainly hold on that, because the, metrics will be delivered at your March 26th meeting that we do our annual report at, which is the first meeting in March. And then the council initiated item, I can't recall who was the one that initiated, I think it was Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza. We can hold that discussion, and again, until either the 2nd or the 18th, which is perfectly fine.
Yeah, since I requested it, council members, and then that might give us some more time, maybe to meet the staff, and then it could be a little bit more clear, and then, yeah.
Absolutely.
Because it's more, even tonight, more questions that, so I'd definitely like to focus on that. Maybe still do the cost presentation, but because we have a closed session tonight, that might take some time. And I am the one that has to have surgery at 6 o'clock in the morning. And we could maybe postpone our, council, reports. So if we could postpone the council reports and the council member initiated item, and then we could take, maybe do the next two. Is that okay for everybody? Because I think members of the community might be interested in the cost presentation.
And then let's just take a quick 5-minute bathroom break, and then we'll regroup and we will start on the item number 4 when we come back.
Long way around to we would like this to be this kind of building.
No, I totally got it.
Oh, thank you. It's not what makes it much.
I know.
I mean, the buildings I've done downtown San Diego.
I know.
Yeah.
No, it's just that,
How's it going for you? I'm saying, never mind, you know, so I don't know. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. I see. I'm here. Look, they were watching us. Nobody knows. What? Oh. Because you're right on the street, there's, the record was, Skyline, but there's another street that was right. And that street was flowing right out of property. We just never noticed how much water was flowing off of that, because it always moved. And this time it was taking waves across the street like an ocean. I walked out and they went, I don't think that's normal. He goes, what? They go, they're breaking the gas. I go, sure. He comes up and he goes, no, I'm going, oh. I go, oh, I don't think that's what it's called.
I like that whirlwind. Like little competition share would be. Oh. You had, because it had nowhere to go. A lot of water off the street on your property. There's two driveways. And then they were washing on the driveway. A lot of water. And she washes right. It doesn't hold. And we can take a lot of water. I'll see you next
So it was water trapped. There wasn't any place for it to go into the ground. And we have a big pond with water. So there was nowhere for the water to essentially rest. And so we were watching it rapids. It has the same sound like when you're rapids, and I'm like, that's not it. I just don't make sure it's
Appreciate it. All right, as we go back on the record, I need a motion and a second to continue item 6, the council initiated item regarding the reallocation of homelessness funds and continuance of the meetings attended on, or city council reports on meetings attended at the expense of the city. Can I get a motion for that?
So moved.
I'll second.
The motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza with a second by Councilmember Altamirano to continue to a future meeting, item number 6, the council initiated item, reallocation of homeless funds, and also the city council reports on meetings attended at the expense of the city. I will now conduct the roll to go on the record. Councilmember Altamirano.
Aye.
Councilmember Heredia.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza.
Aye.
Mayor Snow.
Aye.
The motion carries on a vote of 4-0.
The next item is reports to council, item number 4. We are doing the second reading on the ordinance adoption by reference of the 2025 California Fire Code, Title 24, Part 9 of the Building Standards Code. I'd like to invite City Attorney Steinke to present the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. This is the second reading of ordinance adoption by reference of the 2025 California Fire Code. Adoption of the California Fire Code occurs every 3 years and is required to stay current with California building standards. The proposed ordinance rescinds the existing fire code chapter in the Lemon Grove Municipal Code and replaces it with the 2025 California Fire Code with local amendments supported by climatic, topographic, and geologic findings. Ordinance number 469 was introduced for its first reading on November 4, 2025, and was adopted by a unanimous vote of the City Council. If adopted, ordinance number 469 will become effective on January 1, 2026. Ordinance number 469 is titled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lemon Grove, California, rescinding section 15.26 of Title 15 of the Lemon Grove Municipal Code, entitled Fire Code, in its entirety, and adopting a new section 15.26, adopting by reference the 2025 California Fire Code and local amendments and related findings. The recommendation today is to adopt by reference the 2025 California Fire Code, including local amendments and related findings. Thank you.
City Manager?
Madam Mayor, City Council, I just want to bring to your attention in the audience is Fire Marshal King is in the audience, as well as one of, is he Deputy Fire Marshal?
Yes.
Deputy Fire Marshal Rodriguez, here, if there's any further questions regarding this report.
Thank you so much. I'll turn to our city clerk and ask if we have any comments or public comment on this.
Mayor Snow, I have no speaker slips for this item.
Okay. And council, I know this is our second reading. Do any of you have any comments on this item or questions? Okay, can I get a motion on this?
I will move to adopt ordinance number 469, adopting by reference the 2025 California Fire Code Title 24, Part 9 of the Building Standards Code.
I'll second that.
The motion was made by Councilmember Altamirano with a second by Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza to approve staff's recommendation. I'll now conduct the roll to call on the record. Councilmember Heredia?
Aye.
Councilmember Altamirano?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza?
Aye.
Mayor Snow?
Aye.
The motion carries in a vote of 4-0.
We will now move on to item number 5. This is the Community-Oriented Policing and Problem-Solving, acronym is COPS, goals and objectives. I'll call on City Manager Romero and Lieutenant Berry to present the report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members. Now, Lieutenant Berry and I did not rehearse who's doing what, so you're gonna see us raw in hand. So let me just give a quick introductory remarks. The COPS program is a pilot program that was funded by Measure T funds this year. It funds 2 officers, or what they call special purpose officers, to do community-oriented policing or problem solving with the community. In other words, they have identified problems that they want to solve, and they are not diverted to patrol. They have flexible schedules, they get to do undercover work, so it's a nice kind of position for law enforcement to utilize some of the skills that they've learned in other aspects of their job. Next slide, please. So one of the criteria that we're looking at to show success of this program, and we're following the same pattern we did with the traffic officer, is to have several goals laid out with certain performance measurements or objectives. Those objectives will be reported on, as I mentioned earlier, at your annual report that is done every year by the Sheriff's Department and the Fire Department. It is always the first meeting in March, and so there will be a separate slide that will then give you the stats to all of these goals and objectives. And with that, I'm going to read the first goal. So I know it's really hard to read over there, but read the first goal and then hand it over to Lieutenant Berry so he can talk a little bit more in depth about the objectives of each of those goals and what the deputies will be doing in tandem with the patrol sergeant who's in charge of the COPS deputies. The first is, again, improve the quality of life for Lemon Grove residents in these areas and decrease calls for service for patrols. And those areas are really more transient related activities, and then working with MTS on the trolley platform to take care of drug sales, retail theft, and other issues that happen on the platform. Lieutenant Berry.
Okay, good evening. Can you hear me? Seems good. Hello. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council. Thanks for allowing me to talk a little bit about this. So yeah, as the city manager was talking about, we have some objectives. These objectives were pretty much laid out from the beginning of the concept of this COPS idea by the city council and the city manager. I think we told you early on that these would be quality of life issues that we want to focus on. That's what these 2 deputies will be doing. So we've seen that one of the bigger challenges that we're having right now is with the transient population. There are activities that come hand in hand with that. A lot of it is theft, which occurred over off North Avenue behind the Food for Less and Home Depot. So we've been involved with that quite a bit before the COPS deputies, and we've basically just handed it off to them. So they've identified, dare I say, frequent flyers or repeat offenders, and they are, I guess, just keeping observations on those folks. We get that information basically from the loss prevention. So we're working hand in hand with loss prevention at the Food for Less, the Home Depot, and soon Harbor Freight. So one of the big things is the theft, and that was related to some transient activities. Including in that will be extra patrols. We were given 2 patrol vehicles that came with this, this measure. And actually, we've also been given the advance of a unmarked vehicle, so that they can go out and not be seen, and just be able to just give that extra measure of just keeping an eye on these problematic areas. When people don't think they're looking, well, we are looking. We're watching over these areas. So that's one of the things we got going on with the transients. And then extra patrols with MTS. We just had an operation last week with them. It was very fruitful. We had 5 felony arrests the other night. That was pretty good. 4 of them were warrants, and I don't remember what the other ones, but we ended up having 5 felony arrests with that operation, and that included the use of these 2 cops deputies. So I'd like to say they're off to a pretty good start, and we've got some good things coming. You want to advance, or you want to?
We have some more goals to talk about.
Yeah, just go
And
through.
so just know you're gonna be talking about the objectives. And then the next one is, again, to provide a more safe environment for customers, decrease retail theft, and decrease calls for service for patrols. And largely, the cops deputies in charge of trying to get their arms around some of the retail theft issues, not only in our large retail stores that are listed here, Home Depot, Food for Less, Albertsons, Harbor Freight, but take a look at some of the other areas that are in the downtown core as well, to see if there's any issues working with the Business Watch. Lieutenant?
Yeah, I'm just going on to this next goal right here. They're conducting surveillance operations for known gang activity. So it's not a major issue for the city, gang activity. Nevertheless, we have some gang members that like to frequent the city from the outside areas, typically Spring Valley, Encanto, Southeast San Diego. So we're keeping an eye on them. We just recently had a presentation at our community academy by a gang deputy who is utilizing that partnership with our cops deputies to keep them informed on people that they are observing that are coming in and out of our city, people that could possibly be dealing in narcotics activities and things of that nature. But those people will be identified quickly, and they will be dealt with through our resources. Again, I'm not raising the alarm of gang activity in the city, but that is one of their cops' objectives, is to keep an eye on gang activity. As it relates again to drug sales, it also helps us prevent drug overdoses, and that decreases the calls for service for the patrol deputies. These 2 deputies that are going to be out there taking care of this proactive approach and measures is going to decrease, maybe not in a huge measurable way, but they will decrease calls for service for our patrol deputies when it comes to things that, when they're not answering calls for service and they're out there watching around for the city, if they observe things that need to be addressed, they can call on these cop deputies to go out and react to those issues, and that'll free up the patrol deputies to go on to something else or to answer calls for service.
And then last thing I want to add, although it's not on the slides, is the cops deputies, in my experience in other sheriff's commands, have actually been utilized as sort of community relations, and because they're more approachable, they're not really in a car, they're walking the streets, they can do more of the community relations that needs to happen to ensure the partnership and safety between law enforcement and the sheriff and residents in Lemon Grove. They also can help with those residents. They have real issues that they may not necessarily want to talk to a patrol officer, because they don't feel comfortable saying, hey, this is a 911 call, but they'll get to know those patrol deputies. Cops deputies also work very closely with our community prevention officer. Most of you know Mrs. Clavenger, and I know I've talked with her to have a desire to restart Business Watch again, so we can get the businesses like Neighborhood Watch, get the businesses involved, to help protect their own businesses and perhaps, start up again, Safe Lemon Grove, in which we have a partnership with, our current cameras and their cameras, so we can help combat crime in a totality space. Lieutenant Barry, is there anything else to add before I hand it to the council for questions?
I just wanted to reemphasize some of their, not so much duties, but some of the things that they're gonna be involved in. Again, keeping tabs on the graffiti, keeping tabs on narcotics, keeping tabs on our registered sex offenders. That is part of their duties as well. And then also partnering with our other commands, whether it's the Imperial Beach cops deputies or the Rancho San Diego crime suppression team. When we have those partnerships and we bring those other resources into the city, which we have because we belong under that command, that really benefits us, that we have that partnership, and we can bring them in, and that's an added bonus for us.
And before I ask if there's any questions of the city council, and complete the report, I do want to say that one of the deputies that is part of our new cops team left our command. She was a patrol deputy and left our command and went to a different command. And as soon as she heard that we were creating this pilot program, she asked to be returned back to Lemon Grove. So we have individuals that are invested in this community and want to ensure that this community is safe for all. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for the report, Lieutenant Barry and City Manager. I will look to the City Clerk and see if we have any public comment on this item.
Mayor Snow, I have no speaker slips for this item.
Okay, and now I will turn to council and see if council has any questions on this item. We'll start with Councilmember Altamirano.
Thank you, Lieutenant Barry. I just have one question. There was a couple months ago, a child walking to school, I believe it was LGA, and there was a car that was following her and tried to get her in the car. Will these deputies be patrolling the areas in the morning to prevent those type of situations? That's important. I know the community was pretty upset and afraid that this was happening. Yeah, that was a concern.
Yeah, those deputies will, they will be added to the rest of the team, including myself, who are out there doing exactly what you're asking about. We're all out there doing that, but they will absolutely be 2 more deputies that are gonna have the ability to just go out and cruise around on their own. They're not answering radio calls, so that is a benefit of them. They can do those, and even, like I said earlier, in a unmarked car. So that's a benefit right there, yes.
Yeah, that's exactly the reason why I was asking, if it's, in the mornings, an unmarked car, if an individual sees a patrol car, then they're probably not gonna attempt anything, but if they don't think anybody's watching them, then they're
Yeah,
most
and
likely to get caught.
and just to be clear, that there will be those mornings that they do that. No, we're not gonna have them doing that every morning, because they're gonna be shifting their schedules, which is another great thing for them. But yes, absolutely. If they're on in the morning, they can easily go out there and perform that patrol.
Thank you.
Councilmember Heredia.
I don't really have any questions, but I just wanted to give you some kudos. I had gotten some feedback actually from a business owner in a village area recently, and they spoke to the efficiency of the department and their concerns when they had called. Not that it has anything to do with cops. Good job.
Mayor Pro Tem Mendoza.
Thank you for the update and a little more in-depth information. I appreciate that your work, they're working with the MTS. I frequent the Massachusetts station, and sometimes there's some dicey activity going on there. And then also, you know, like, the Jack in the Box is fine. That parking lot where the Jack in the Box is, that's a shady area and has been as long as I've been hanging around Lemon Grove. So I'm sure you're very aware of that. That's a good spot to catch some unusual activity, especially in an unmarked car. Thank you.
So one of the, in the past, we've had people who were concerned with, having, police force address issues that, maybe not are in the wheelhouse of our sheriff's department. So if somebody's having, for example, a mental health crisis and responding to that. Is this group better adept at that? And then I'll ask the city manager to give us an update, because we also had applied for an anti-violence grant in coordination and collaboration with some community-based, nonprofit organizations, and see what we're doing on that, because this fills, the COPS program fills a need that we had, but we still have other needs that I don't think that the COPS program is best suited for. And so we'll get an update there. But Lieutenant Barry, can you speak to their role and perhaps some of the limitations the program has, and perhaps they can address the other issues?
Well, much like every deputy at the station, we've all been trained in the mental health crises that are in the communities, whether that's de-escalation, the observance of it and how to recognize it, and then how to respond to those calls when we get that call of someone violently smashing things inside their house and having an episode. So all of our deputies receive that type of training, and then continual training throughout the years. There's no stop to that training. Specifically, they're not meant for that call, neither am I. We do have a deputy at our station. Actually, let me rephrase that. We have a clinician at our station who works on our mid shift throughout the week, and she responds with certain deputies that have been assigned to her. So she's specialized in handling those cases, and she will get recommendations from all of the deputies at the station. She will have the ability to utilize those COPS deputies when there's, if it's something as simple as, hey, I need to contact a community member for a follow-up, if one of them are available to go with her, then absolutely. So it's not their specific role, but they have the training to go to those calls for service.
And then when we applied for the grant, they told us they're not gonna tell us until December, so a couple weeks. I'll let the council know in a couple weeks. They said the first half of December.
I just wanted to stress to the community that we're not just relying on our sheriff's department to address all these community issues that we have. It's a multi-pronged approach. And so I'm excited that we have the COPS program online. It was definitely a need in our community to have this proactive approach to policing, especially for our businesses, to help support them in that business district. The other thing I wanted to do, we had input from the community in the past that they wanted to know what would be measures of success or milestones that the sheriff's department felt like would be good measurements of success. And so, does the city have an idea, either from the city manager or from Lieutenant Barry or both, on what kind of milestones you would like to achieve in the next year through this program?
Well, I'd be happy to answer that. Can I just say one thing about what you mentioned with the mental health thing? I just wanted to point out what I thought was a pretty good success to a recent mental health situation that we had at a residence here in the city. It was brought to my attention by Paolo, our city code compliance officer, and he was concerned that there was a situation going on at a residence, And so, through Paolo, myself, the fire marshal, Adult Protective Services, and also Mike Fellows, we came up with a plan to address this, this residence with the two individuals that were there. And ultimately, we walked away with a pretty good resolution. They were deemed to be safe in their environment, but I just wanted to show you that that was a multifaceted partnership that started with Paolo. I mean, he was adamant that I needed to go over there and see what was going on with this house, and just the partnership that came after that and the conclusion, I thought that was a success. So I wanted to highlight that since you mentioned it. And as far as measures of success for this program, I mean, the ultimate measure is going to be that you're all going to vote on that this is going to be a permanent thing in the end. To me, that's a measure of success. But my goal is to measure that success is to see that these deputies are staying active, all right? They're already hit the streets running. I mean, they are going at it. There are things that I can't wait to tell you that they've got going on, but they're making good arrests. They're making important arrests, okay? They're making good contacts with the community. We had a community member at our community academy come up to us with a situation, and we've taken that by the horns, and it's gonna be good. But that came to us from a community member. So the fact that we have community members that are coming to us already, and they feel comfortable to tell us, hey, this is what's going on over here, can you guys look at it? To me, that's a success already. So, good statistics between now and March. That's really how I'm gonna be able to show that to you come March. But along with the fact that they are actively out there, just the two of them, and they're really doing some good work already. I don't know if that's vague, but that's really the best I can give you right now.
And I think one of the things that the lieutenant and I and the sergeant has talked about is quantifiable, is not having repeat customers. So solving the problem at the core. So not seeing the same individual with a retail theft, not arresting the same street dealer, but making sure that we build a case so that goes away. And second of all, to relieve some of our patrol deputies from some of the work that they have. We have one of the busiest stations in Lemon Grove, not only with calls for service, but also deputy-initiated activities. And this is when deputies are just patrolling and they find something that doesn't look quite right, that looks suspicious. And so part of that measurement, talking to, again, the lieutenant and sergeant, is to bring some of those numbers down so the patrol deputies aren't doing as much overtime as they're writing their reports. I will encourage all of you, and I'll send out something later this week about a ride-along. There is a lot of paperwork law enforcement has to do. It came out from the community academy. Every contact with an individual, every time they stop, there is several required documentation that they have to do, and they all have to write those reports. Otherwise, they all get in trouble. So it's helping relieve some of that pressure for those deputies. And so they can actually do what they wanted to do, which is more active patrol, more engagement in the community. And then we're hoping that these deputies can reignite our bike patrol as well. And patrol the downtown on bicycle.
I'll look to council. Do you have any further questions on this? All right, I'd just like to say thank you. We're excited to have them in our community. One other thing. So I've noticed on social media at least, and when we had the regional task force out on homelessness, when they were on North Avenue, there was a lot of two issues. One was illegal dumping, but the other one was community residents harassing people who are unsheltered and also the workers who are trying to connect with them. And so those are just two of the things where I'm really concerned for the safety. The RTFH people expressed that they wanted more sheriff's patrolling in that area because there were people driving their car by really fast and honking their horn, and harassing the people that were there. And so, all right, is there anything else that we need to do on that, or just receive the report? Okay, wonderful. So we have continued item number 6 and the city council reports on meetings attended at the expense of the city. So now I'll turn the time over to our city attorney, Kristen Steinke, regarding closed session.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the city council. We are adjourned to closed session for one item, which is the public employee performance evaluation under government code section 94957, for the city manager. Thank you.
But I'd love to connect with you. I just don't have a first time in the day, like, to go in, so I can do it. Okay. So let's connect. I'll connect you tomorrow, and we'll all the bottom line. Okay, I appreciate you. Thank you. Great,